Thanks to LMNT for sponsoring today's video. Today I'm sharing another video in my series Summer Food Quick, and this one is Slow Cooker Edition. The slow cooker or crock pot, which is one of my favorite ways to cook food, specifically in the summertime when it is really hot outside. Who wants to be over their kitchen stove all day or turning on the oven to heat up their whole house? So break out your slow cooker. It's not just for winter and fall. There are amazing summer-inspired recipes that you can make in your slow cooker, and I'm going to share with you several of my favorite ones that I've made lately. So I'm starting on the first slow cooker meal this week, and this is going to be a Hawaiian style pork roast, and we're gonna let it cook low and slow. So for this, I'm using a whole fresh pineapple. You could also substitute it for frozen, which makes it really easy because you can just throw it into the crock pot frozen. But if you have fresh on hand, it is so delicious and juicy. So I peeled and cored and cut up a pineapple into about 1-inch chunks. You can kind of do it at your discretion. And then I'm putting that in the crock pot with some red onion and some ginger. And for the fresh ginger, I just like to peel it with the back of a spoon, and then I will slice it up into thin little pieces, or you can leave it in one chunk and just let it sit in the crock pot. But I like to slice it thin so it gets really distributed into the slow cooker. And then I have a roughly 2.5 pound Boston pork butt, and I'm putting that in the slow cooker on top of that pineapple and onion. And then I'm gonna make a nice quick sauce to pour over the entire thing, and we'll let that cook low and slow all day. And that sauce is amazing, served a multitude of different ways. So I'll show you how I'm gonna serve it in a bit. But to make the sauce, I'm using a mixture of coconut aminos. I'm using a little bit of sriracha or chili sauce, and this one I actually love. It's from a local Thai restaurant, but it is the best sriracha, so I always save their little packets. And I'm adding in some of that just to give it a little bit of flavor. You don't want to give it too much heat. I do a tiny bit of brown sugar just to give it a hair more sweetness because it's a lot of meat, and then a little bit of rice wine vinegar to balance out everything and give it a little bit of acidity. I set my slow cooker to low, and I like to let this cook for at least 7 or 8 hours until that whole pork roast will just fall apart and is nice and tender. Then I'll remove the pork roast from the slow cooker and put it on a cutting board, and then I'll just use 2 forks, or you can even kind of poke it with a knife until it just shreds apart. And I prefer it to be a little bit chunky but still shredded. And then I also dice up some green onions, and I'm gonna add that into it as well because I love topping it with just a little bit of something fresh. Then add everything here back into the slow cooker, into that cooking liquid, and give everything a toss and mix it all together. And that pineapple is some of the most flavorful pineapple. This reminds me of like a super authentic restaurant dish that you would get somewhere, and it just has so much flavor. Now to serve it, you could serve it a number of different ways, but our favorite is truly just over rice. We love like beefy rice. Even though this is pork, it kind of reminds me of like when you just put a little bit of pot roast on rice. I had that a lot growing up as a kid. So we serve this over some brown rice that we cook in a little bit of broth, some butter and salt, and then a big scoop of that delicious sauce with all the pork and pineapple. A couple days later, I started on the next slow cooker recipe, and this is one of my favorites too. It's super versatile. You can make it ahead of time too and keep your slow cooker insert in your fridge and then just pull it back out and reheat it in the slow cooker. I do that all the time, especially in the fall when we make like a big batch of chili. I'll leave it in that insert and then the next day just pull it out and reheat it, and it makes mealtime so easy. You can feed a crowd really easily and there's such minimal cleanup. So this was a couple days later because we usually don't eat that much meat back to back. But today I'm starting on a beef roast recipe, but it's not your typical pot roast or anything like that. It's actually something that is great to put inside of tacos or burritos or make some sort of burrito bowl. And it's a barbacoa beef recipe. This has been on my blog for a couple of years now, but recipes tend to get buried. And this one is so good that I need to bring it back because I know that you guys will enjoy this one. It is so flavorful, but so easy and just really gets you out of that mundane rut of making pot roast and beef roast the same way. So what I'm doing is starting by making a seasoning blend, and I'm using a little bit of chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder, some cumin, some paprika, and then of course salt and pepper. And we're just going to mix that together. And it's kind of like a homemade version of a taco seasoning or a fajita seasoning. And today I actually had some chipotle powder. That is something I've been keeping in my spice cabinet as of late, and it adds so much flavor without having to break out a can of adobo peppers. You can just keep that dried spice on your shelf and pull it out and just add a little bit. It's a little bit spicy, so I don't add much, but it adds such a nice smokiness. So after I make my seasoning blend, I drizzle my beef with a little avocado oil on both sides so I can get that blend to stick to it. And I just heavily sprinkle the whole mix on both sides of the beef. You can get it on the sides a little bit. And then I'll sprinkle that red onion around the base of the beef. I just diced it nice and fine. That way it kind of melts and just becomes a sauce, and there's not huge chunks of onions after it cooks. And then I'm adding in the juice of a lime, and you can do the zest as well, but I typically just do the juice for limes. I let that cook all day, and then I'll show you how I serve it. The East Coast has been having a heat wave, and every time I head out to the garden, I'm instantly reminded of why hydration is so important. And I try to stay hydrated without all of the sugar and the dyes that are usually in sports drinks or electrolyte drinks, and that is why I drink LMNT. LMNT is a zero sugar electrolyte drink mix and an electrolyte sparkling drink, and it's formulated to help you get your hydration right. So we need that sodium in it and potassium and magnesium to help our bodies be properly hydrated. And electrolytes are not just for athletes or people who exercise really hard. Whether you're a mom, you're a gardener, you're a homemaker, everybody needs those electrolytes to feel their best and avoid things like headaches and chronic fatigue. This time of year when you're going on hikes or you're going on summer vacations, it's an amazing thing to just throw in your purse and have along with you. They have so many different flavors, including a new one that's limited edition, which is lemonade salt. So it's like a delicious lemonade. All you have to do is mix it up with a little bit of water. You could even add it to your iced tea. If you want to try it out too, you can get a free sample pack just by going to the link in my description box. It's drinkelement.com/healthy Elizabeth, and they'll give you a free sample pack with any purchase, so you could try it out totally risk-free. Thanks again to LMNT for sponsoring today's video. I am always cooking and chopping vegetables, and you guys ask me frequently about my butcher block, and it's just a plain butcher block cutting board. It's really big, and I love that because it's great for chopping a bunch of veggies at once, and it's not that hard to keep clean at all. I really don't do a lot to it. I'll usually just use my regular dish soap, which is like just a normal kind of more natural dish soap, and I'll just wash it and rinse it. And then sometimes if you get something stained like a strawberry or a carrot in the grooves of the wood, I'll just sprinkle some baking soda on it and then do a little bit of water to make a paste and then rinse it, and it rinses right off. And then all I do after that to maintain this beautiful cutting board, I've had it for a couple years now, and there is not one thing wrong with it. It is impeccable quality. All I do is dry it off completely on both sides, and then I use this little, I think it's a beeswax balm. I'll link it below if you want to see it, but I love this one. I've used another one. I think it's by the Booze Block brand, but I actually prefer this other one. And so I'll just use like one of our paper coffee filters, or sometimes I'll use my bare hand. And then every week or so, I smooth this balm all over the cutting board on both sides, and then you can rub it off a little bit, and it is perfectly ready to go and maintains its integrity incredibly well. So don't be scared off by big butcher blocks. They are actually very practical and easy to take care of. So once my beef is done cooking, then I'm ready to assemble. And tonight I'm actually using this beef to make homemade burritos. And oh, this is my favorite summer meal right now. They're so delicious. Every single person in my house will eat this up really quickly. So that's how I know it's a success, is when everybody eats it. So after the beef is done cooking, I actually take a measuring cup and I'll scoop out some of that cooking liquid and I'll use it to help flavor my rice. I have some basmati rice that I'm cooking, and so I add in a little bit of those cooking liquids and then bone broth and water, and I'll let that rice cook. But to serve this, I'm actually going to end up putting some of the beef and some of the rice into tortillas. I love that Rice and Puff brand. If you can find those are our favorite. If not, you can use homemade ones. Those are especially good. I love the texture of homemade. I'll shred that beef up and add it right back into the liquid. There's not going to be a ton of liquid. It's not going to be soupy, but it's going to be plenty saucy. So you don't have to add any other cooking liquid into the beef, which I think just makes it even more beefy because the liquid that comes out of it mixed with that lime juice is super flavorful. And you can also add another squeeze of lime at the end. I forgot to show that, but I usually do that. Or you could just add it right on top of your burrito. How I like to assemble these is take my fresh tortillas that we just fried up on the skillet, and then I'll start with a little bit of that flavorful beefy rice, and then I will top it with some shredded white cheddar cheese, some sour cream, and then of course that delicious beef. And I also love a good big handful of shredded lettuce. That night after dinner, I ended up getting out some organic navy beans. I try to buy these kind of in the bulk section. You can get a lot of them for pretty inexpensive. And I'm going to soak these overnight. So I'm going to put a couple cups, or I think I used maybe around a pound of navy beans. And I'm putting those in a glass bowl, and I'm going to cover them with a bunch of fresh water, and then I'm going to let these sit out overnight so that they can puff up and become more easy to digest, and so that they can cook properly tomorrow. So I'm going to let them sit overnight covered, and then tomorrow we'll get them into the slow cooker. So a lot of times it's really helpful to have full meals that you can put in the slow cooker, but I also find it helpful to have sides that you can put in the slow cooker. This time of year especially, our family loves to grill out, and so I will stock up my freezer with meat from the farm, and so any night of the week we can throw a little bit of meat on the grill and have delicious grilled meat. But a lot of times I need a good side to go with it, and this is perfect because it can just sit in there all day in the crock pot or slow cooker, and then you won't have to mess with it. You can just pull it out right when you're done grilling your meat, or if you have some sort of rotisserie chicken, there's so many things you can pair it with. And it's also a great potluck dish. So I'm starting on these apple cider baked beans. My kids love these baked beans, and it's really hard to make. Homemade ones sometimes taste as good as like the big brands at the grocery store, but these baked beans, oh, they are so good. The flavor is incredible, the texture and just how rich they are full of flavor, and they really don't have as much sugar as the grocery store ones. And of course you can make a big batch of it. Beans are super economical, so this is great if you're trying to feed a family on a budget. So the first thing I'm starting on doing is getting some bacon rendered in my slow cooker. It has a saute function, but if yours doesn't, I recommend just making some bacon for breakfast that morning or just baking it in the oven because it's so much easier to make bacon in the oven versus on the pan, because then you don't have a bunch of mess to clean up. So I saute that bacon right in my slow cooker, and then I'm gonna remove that bacon and I'm gonna pour out most of that grease. And I have a question. How do you dispose of your bacon fat? That is something I would love to dive into because I feel like everybody does something a little bit different. And if you're not cooking with a bunch of bacon fat, then I would love to know what you do with it. So I'm going to get out all of the rest of my ingredients, and I'm getting that onion that I chopped up earlier into the bacon grease, and I'm going to let that cook down for a while and get nice and kind of caramelized while I get together the other ingredients and kind of like the sauce that we're going to add to our baked beans. So we're using a variety of different flavorings here to make this sauce for those beans super flavorful. And now this is my secret family recipe, so I'm so excited to share it with you. But I'm starting with some tomato paste, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, some apple cider vinegar, which has great nods to the apple cider we'll use in a bit. And then I use a few different things to sweeten these baked beans. I'm using some maple syrup, a little bit of molasses because it adds so much depth of flavor. So I love that. Plus it adds like the richness and the color that we want for baked beans. So molasses is just a must. It kind of takes brown sugar up a notch. And then I'm using a little bit of brown sugar as well. I like to add in a few tablespoons of mustard, and lately I have been in love with English mustard, like the Coleman's brand one. So you can use either Dijon mustard or a nice kind of like horseradishy mustard, like an English mustard. That's what I used, and oh, it's fantastic, just absolutely fabulous flavor. Then I'm going to season it with salt and pepper just to taste, and we'll taste it again later, but you always want to make sure that you season beans early. That way you can kind of get into it and not be flavorless. So I'm going to get that cooked down in the crock pot. I cook it for a few minutes and simmer it almost like a barbecue sauce. So once that sauce is nice and bubbly, and you can either do that in another pan or just put it in your crock pot, it's going to be perfectly fine. It'll cook down anyway, so you really can skip that step if you want to. I'm going to add in my beans that I've drained and rinsed, and then I'll add in that cooked bacon from earlier and stir it up, and you're going to let this cook low and slow all day, or you can put it on high, but beans take a good long while to cook. So just set it and forget it. But while I'm in the kitchen, I'm going to go ahead and put together a marinade for some chicken that I'm going to end up grilling tonight to go with the side of baked beans. And this is a really simple marinade, but I think it's perfect for summer and this time of year because it just has a lot of bright citrus notes. And I'm zesting an orange, and I got this new zester, and oh, it has been a game changer for me. I don't like microplanes because I tend to like hurt my knuckles on it, but this is fantastic for getting zest off of things, so I highly recommend it. I'll link it below if you're interested in parting ways with your microplane like I am. So I am zesting and juicing an orange and a couple of limes. You can get as much of the juice and the zest as you want in there. Usually for lemons, I'll use my little glass juicer that I love. You just twist the lemon on. But sometimes when you have something like limes, even after I warm it up a little bit, they can still be really hard to squeeze. And so my biggest tip for that is to use a pair of tongs and kind of put it towards the back of the tongs and squeeze. And I'm telling you, you will get out so much juice from your limes. So that's just kind of a little lime hack. Now I'm grabbing some garlic. Of course, we're gonna put garlic in this marinade, so you can use 3 to 4 cloves of garlic, and I just like to smash them up. I usually don't even chop it up. I'll just smash it really good and get that in the marinade, and the garlic will do its thing. Now, usually in this marinade, I'll use something like a jalapeno or a poblano pepper, but I have these banana peppers growing in the garden right now, so that is the perfect excuse to run outside and grab one to use for this marinade. So I'm leaving most of the seeds in this. It's not going to be super spicy because it's a mild, kind of sweeter banana pepper. So I'm just going to dice that up and throw it in, but you can definitely substitute it for a jalapeno. Just take out most of the seeds and the ribbing so it's not too spicy. I'll add in some oil and some salt and pepper to taste. And then for some smokiness, I'll do a little bit of chili powder, and you can also do some paprika as well. And then I'll get some chicken marinating in there. You can use chicken breasts or chicken thighs, even drumsticks. And I'll just let that sit all day until I'm ready to grill it for dinner and serve it with the baked beans. Well, I hope this gave you some good inspiration for some summer food that you can make quickly and in your slow cooker that is just flavorful, family friendly, and full of wholesome foods. So if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and check out my other video, which is Summer Food Quick Breakfast Edition. I will leave that video linked along with the recipes down below in the description box, so make sure to check it out. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen.